Where are you, Og? Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And it has been a minute. Popping into Anchor this morning, I actually had to figure it out. The UI has changed since I've been in it, but I had not realized that I had not released an episode since August, so without question, it has definitely been a minute. So I wanted to take some time today, first to reassure everybody I'm still alive and to say thank you to the folks who had reached out to me to make sure I was doing okay and to encourage me to stay at the table, stay on the mic. Had some call-ins I've recorded the answers to. They've been sitting around and editing for months. That I anticipate is the bulk of the episode. But first, I would like to give a shout out to my buddy Ben over at Cold Light Press. This week, Cold Light Press put up a blog post announcing an adventure site contest. Reading the blog post, and I will link this in the show notes so you can take a look when you have an opportunity. It's in response to a couple reviewer-hosted contests, and the objective is to create adventure sites. Small sites, small maps, stuff that would fit into a hex crawl or into a city, something that could be thrown down and the party could stumble into on a regular old adventure night. Organized on the Classic Adventure Gaming Podcast Discord. There is a Discord for this, but I don't have a valid link for it. I will have to ask politely. But whatever that link may be, the top 8, as judged by a couple recognizable names in the blogosphere ecosystem, would be bundled into a free product on drive-thru, published under Creative Commons, similar to how One Page Dungeon operates, and then Merciless Merchants, Malarex of the Merciless Merchants, say that 5 times fast, is offering some prize support. So head on over to coldlightrpgpress.weebly.com. Again, link is in the show notes. Take a look, and I would encourage you to submit something. Submissions are open December through January 31st, and I will make a point to put something in myself. Just like the original No Art Punk contest, can you write a better adventure than Old Dog? Let's find out. This winter at coldlightrpgpress.weebly.com. Link in the show notes.
Hey, Taylor, really enjoyed your latest podcast and want to say that I really liked the concept behind that system you had as a kid where, spending experience to change your die rolls could eventually build your renowned. And that is a neat idea. We've messed around in the past with adding a system like that to gain renown, and to have a separate tracker for that from your experience. And I like the idea that, if you fiddle with fate too much, you'll gain a reputation, and that would add to the renown. I wonder if, I don't necessarily expect you to remember the whole system, but did you allow other ways to increase your renown? Like if they defeated a foe that was a higher level than them, or if they did something that was well known to a town, like saved the town or something like that, did that add renown points? I'm curious, how you developed that aside from just that one piece. Very neat. Talk to you later.
Actually, I may have that game mechanic lying around somewhere. I'm not very good about backing up stuff on hard drives, but occasionally I do, and I may have this lying around. I'll try to take a look. Unfortunately, though, as I recall, I only ever had one player try it. I don't know if I was just too lenient on him or what, but I only ever had one player use it. And I think he acquired like a 2 or 3% renown, and then the mechanic at the time, because it was so underutilized, it never made a difference. I had certain percent. I think the basic idea was a flat percentile chance to be recognized, and then you built up from there. And then it never came up. So unfortunately, I did not at the time see a future in it. It seemed like a cool idea, then it just didn't come up at the table, and it is what it is. So, but I will take a look and see if I can't put that together. Thank you for calling in, and it'll be interesting. Thank you for calling in. Thank you for your interest in it, and I will see if I can find if I can find that old document. Thank you, in any case, for your interest in it and the encouragement there too. I will pass that along to Past Taylor, but I'll see if I can find that document lying around.
Hey Taylor, Daniel from Bandit, keep calling in. I'm not quite done with the episode, but I had to pause for a little bit, and I didn't want to forget what I was going to say. So I've got a couple of comments, lots of great stuff happening so far with the calls. I'll start with Hobbs' call because I thought it was interesting because you seem to also agree with him about this mercenary thing. But what I found, and I'm curious what your experience is, and also Hobbs, I guess, if they want to call back. My players start off with we need gold because we got to level up, and they do find motivation in that, right? Like, okay, we're going into the dungeon, we're getting the gold. But what I found is generally once they start to level up a bit, yes, they still want to level up. If I ask my players, do you want to level up? They'd be like, yes. But they still find things in the world to do. Like the quest they're on right now has been very, very slow in leveling. And they could very easily, they have avoided a hidden treasure. They've avoided fighting trolls who they knew had a bunch of treasure. There's a giant who they know has a bunch of treasure, who they could, with some strategy, could probably take out because they know the locations and they're pretty powerful now. But they're not doing that. They want to be part of the world, so they're involving themselves in this plot between evil high priests and stuff like that. And because of that, they haven't got hardly any XP because they haven't been really fighting a lot because it's been a lot of intrigue. And they also haven't been collecting much treasure at all. So it's interesting because you would think at this point, be like, well, maybe I should just start giving them experience points. But because I'm trying to stick as close as possible to the little brown books, I'm really trying to just give them XP for what they're supposed to get it for. And honestly, they seem happy. And, and again, I do check in, so I say seem. It's not like I'm like, you guys aren't leveling up very fast because you're not getting gold, blah, blah. And they're like, well, this plot is happening. We can't just leave. So again, I wonder if you've had a similar experience, or do your group stay mercenary all the ways to the end?
First, before I forget, to answer your question directly, do players retain a mercenary attitude? While I can't speak for Jason's game, I can speak for mine, and it has varied by table. Now, I have run for several distinct groups in my lifetime. I had my pre-college group that I played with, my college group that I played with, and then I have since had a post-college group that I played with. The pre-college group, that is a little foggy, but what I can say is that we were playing 3rd edition, so not OSR. OSR didn't exist at the time, but not a TSR edition, not an old school game. And combat was constant. Combat was everywhere. And when the party got too good for what they were playing, then new monsters got invented with weird abilities to make it more difficult to hurt them, because that's all we had. We did not have a mean to acquire the books, and so some of us would have one book, some of us would have the other book, and then we get together and and that worked because I got my brother to go in on it with me, and then I think I still have that book. But what I can say is, as a child, the combat part was constant, and we tried to build higher. We went into the dungeon, we fought things, we got super powerful. Then we had armies that we put together, and we used the rules that were available to us. I think we switched over to Warhammer rules at the time, because that, again, this was pre-internet and pre-PDF market, so you played what you had. And so we played a lot of Warhammer type games to account for the domain tier, and it was all about the battles in that pre-college group. College group played a much wider variety of games. We played a bunch of the Mongoose stuff as they were republishing and refurbishing old IPs. In the 2000s. We played a little bit of second edition. We played a little bit of third edition. Surprisingly, nobody liked fourth edition. It just wasn't our thing. And I guess that should not be surprising, because that group was primarily motivated by character goals and story points. Now, I didn't do milestones as written. Other refs in our group did. A couple of them would do level when I feel like it, which I didn't get into that as much, but from the games that I ran, what I found I was having to do to motivate those players, or not motivate, but we enjoyed playing the game, and what I found was that when I would throw out stuff for them to do, sandbox style, because that's the consistency, and I'll probably remember to pipe up about that when I get to the end. I always run a sandbox, and when the players had an option, they pursued leads that aligned with the character they were running at the time. Now, were we story gamers? No, not really, because I'm thinking of a buddy of mine who I've mentioned him before because he moved to my neck of the woods. I actually texted him recently because it was his birthday. He never texted back, so I hope his number didn't change. It is what it is. But he went through 4 characters in one campaign. And same story. Each character had a personality that it kind of developed, and that player pursued goals that were in line with that personality. So what I found was they would earn money, and I will admit I like keeping my party poor, but they would earn cash to pursue their goals, but that was the thing. The gold was not the point. They pursued character ends, and I fell into the trap of what you were saying you were thinking about doing, because nobody was doing the thing that XP was supposed to be doing, or they were supposed to be doing to get XP. I started giving XP for, I guess, quests. Quest XP is a good way to put it, because they would have things that they wanted to accomplish. They would have means to get to what they would want to accomplish, and they would earn XP along the way. Popping in to record part 2 of that. That actually does kind of sound like milestones as written in the newer benefit of hindsight. So then we come to the post-college group. Post-college group, kind of a mixed bag. A couple of my players were very character driven. A couple of my these are in person. A couple of my players were very exploration driven. They wanted to see what was out there. And then online, my experience online has been fairly mercenary, but to be fair, I have not run that much online. I have run so much more in person than I have run online, that in the games that I have run online have all been kind of lower level, so pre-heroic tier. So you have to be mercenary in that portion of play. So what do my current friends like? I am not sure. I will have to get my game back up off the ground and run them through it and see what happens. And good call. And you apologize later. Good call. Thank you for making it.
Which ties me to the second thing. You were talking about OD&D and the 100 XP per hit die, combat thing. And, it's funny, when I first started playing again, I've said this before, I started with 5e. When I very first started playing, I started with BX. But one thing that turned me off from 5e after a while was that, by the rules, I mean, you've got the optional rule of milestones, which, again, I'm not going to get into that, but combat is XP, right? You don't get any XP for gold. So what you end up with is a system that drives players forward to fight things, right? So what I did in early levels was exactly that, and then I switched it to milestones because I found the combat to be incredibly tedious and boring at high levels. Although it's interesting because talking to Joe about Pathfinder, it seems like it's not like that. But anyways, I'm not going to get into that because I don't play Pathfinder. And obviously, I'm sure in 5e some people love long combat. So again, I'm not making a judgment there. But for me, it wasn't for me. So when I went to BX and went gold for XP, and it was really about exploration, I was very happy about that. And it seemed like that was very contenting for me. But again, if that is the only means, right, because Greyhawk, as you said, really nerfed the XP that you get for fighting, it can be, right, that it does limit your storylines on some level that the characters can follow, right? Like if they want to level up, then they're going to want to do certain things, which means the story that your campaign forms as you go, the emergent story is going to go in a certain direction. OD&D, on the other hand, kind of solves this. And when I first saw 100 XP per hit die, I was like, oh, is this going to create the 5e thing where we're just fighting all the time? But it doesn't, because what happens is it actually allowed, because of the I was going to say multiplier, but divider, really, you end up getting, for value of risk, you end up getting less XP as you level up for combat, right? Because even if you're fighting, let's say, an 8 hit die dragon, that's only worth 800 experience points. And if you've got a party of 6, characters that are at a level that they can fight a dragon, that's a drop in the bucket. So the combat at that level is not as valuable as other things like collecting treasure. So the game actually allows for like waves of different things to happen, right? Where you can basically go, all right, well, we're going to early on, we can just go into the goblins, but you can go into the goblins' lair. And if they don't have a lot of treasure, if you want to keep your party a little cash poor at the beginning for that struggle part of it that people seem to like in the OSR, they can still level up, right? So you don't have this problem where it's like we've been playing 3 months, but nobody's leveled up, even though we've fought, and defeated hundreds of orcs and stuff, but we've only collected 17 copper pieces, so we're broke, right? That doesn't happen in OD&D, because if you did survive those sessions, you're going to level up. And the thing is, you're going to want to go deeper in the dungeon, because once you're second level, those orcs and goblins and kobolds become less valuable to you experience points wise. And deeper in the dungeon is where you can place the riches, and that's what balances that out. So I think OD&D, honestly, I mean, I say it somewhat tongue-in-cheek, obviously, because clearly D&D was a phenomenon, and I am not the person to say they did anything, air quoting here, wrong, but the way OD&D's XP is set up, I think, is nearly perfect. I wouldn't change it at all, because for all those reasons you said, you can emulate all the fiction with it, and it really works for many different styles of play. And of course, if you wanted to just be slayers and fight things, you could do that, right? You could take your 10th level fighter and fight hydras and purple worms and get the full XP and stuff. So it's not like you can't just keep on fighting if you love that. And if you love stealing and manipulating and discovery and getting gold, you can do that as well. All of that works. In any case, that's a really... my message is as long as your whole episode, practically. Sorry for such a long message, but you really inspired me there. Lots of great calls so far. I'm going to listen to the second half a little bit later, but really good. Thanks.
Finishing out your call, I am reminded more so of my pre-D&D experiences. My pre-D&D, we'll call it. Playing actual war games. Mordheim is the best example of this, because we got to do a couple campaigns of it, and I fought really hard to get other campaigns going, but then I just couldn't keep up, I guess. Folks had things they were doing. You get XP in Mordheim from gold. Two things happen. You find the premise of the game is that a town, Mordheim, has been struck by a meteor, and the meteor broke up into chaos-infused magical warpstone. And for each piece of warpstone that you find, you can sell it or eat it or whatever your faction does, and you get a gold piece reward. That gold piece reward is what you use to replenish bad unit, dead minions. You use that to buy new minions. You use that to upgrade your equipment, and generally your warband grows. And you get points of experience in part for participating in, surviving, winning, but you get points for each piece of warpstone, and that adds up very quickly. That group was the mercenary experience. That gang was the mercenary experience. You knew what you were going in for. You went in, you got it, and you did it. And we played the snot out of that game. We played the main thing. We downloaded the extra stuff. We go in the woods around. I tried to get my buddies to play an RPG version of it. But therein was the problem. By this point, the concept of D&D as a war game had eroded from the public consciousness. D&D as a war game was something of the past, and all of my players, when they heard role play, they immediately associated it with the role of the character, and that put them in the character goal mindset. By comparison, friends who treated their dudes as pawns, who treated their armies, their warbands, their parties as armies, warbands, and parties, they were the mercenaries. So again, I think I'm going to double back and say it, for my experience, depends entirely on the group.
Hey Taylor, I brought that up about VTTs because I'm curious if one of the tokens is the mapper, and if that mapper moves over, say, a pit trap, does that kind of solidify the idea that the mapper and the map is an actual in-game artifact? If you're using where the mapper walks to force that character to undergo whatever repercussions of walking to that spot incurs, then it seems like, hey, the map is reality.
Bum, bum, bum. More seriously, I actually don't remember what we were talking about when we were going back and forth on this. I should probably re-listen to that episode. But that is a good point, because in the past, I have been very tempted to, and I think I actually had a player self-impose flipping the map over when they figured that the character wouldn't have access to it. And I can also see the potential for not having the mapper get hit, because you think about it, a pit trap, for example, doesn't necessarily open for the first person who steps on it. I remember this happened in Kalmata at least once, where the first couple folks went over it, didn't open, second couple folks went over it, and it totally did, and then you got a gap in the middle, so you had some people on the one side, some people on the other, and you have to figure out how to get the people in the middle who survived out of the pit. In that sense, if your mapper was in the back or in the front, they would have been fine, and the map would have been fine, but if they were in the middle, it absolutely would have fallen in, and you have to figure it out. So that puts it into perspective. And I guess it probably just depends on how you want to play, because I'm not sure about an example of play for this. I will admit I have not perused the TSR books recently, the examples of play recently, so there may be one where it tells you to do this. There may be something in the Strategic Review or Dragon about this. Tell me, callers, if there is and I'm just missing it. But in terms of official response, I think it probably depends on how the table is played. Does it work for the table? Personally, I would like to see the map disappear. That adds a layer of complexity that makes you need to pull your buddies out of the hole. That if it's a chute, maybe, that goes down into the next level with no easy way back out, you as the party now have to make a decision. Do we try to make our way back out from memory, or do we follow them down to retrieve that valuable map? Lots of lots of opportunity to confound your players there, lots of opportunity to make choices that have real consequences. And I think the map's a physical object in my interpretation. But again, like I said, I don't. I need to re-listen to those episodes. I probably should have done that before recording this response. But I like the direction that the game would go if the map was real. So make sure to nominate which character has the pencil, because if they're going down, so's that artifact.
Hey Taylor, Jason here. VTTs are the devil. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, one big advantage of Fantasy Grounds, and there are probably other ones that do it, but the VTTs I have the most experience with are Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. Fantasy Grounds has a feature where the GM can lock it so the players can't move their tokens. So the way it works is the player can move their token to where they want to go, but it doesn't actually move until the GM presses a button to let it move. The player can basically move the token, say I want to go there, and the GM has to approve the move before the token actually will move, which is a good thing.
That is pretty handy, now that you describe it. I know Map Tool back in the day had the ability to freeze player tokens, and I want to say Foundry has the ability to freeze player tokens, but I really like the approve player moves, because that would actually be pretty handy. I may have to look into that. I say that. I'm interested in looking into it, but we'll see.
But, yeah, when I've run games, typically, I'm trying to think now. It's been a while since I've run a tactical game with tokens on like a tactical map. It's probably been a couple years. And really, at that point, we did let the players go, but it was kind of a turn-based game, like ICRPG. So really it was just one player going at a time anyway. So it wasn't a problem with everybody moving their tokens. But yeah, my preference, strong preference, is to have one party token. I really like the idea of you, the GM, moving that token. And yeah, for combat, now it depends. So in playing, I'm playing in Joe Richter's Pathfinder 1 game, and we're using tokens, and it's all tactical and all that kind of stuff. And but we don't really drop into the battle map until it's a battle map. So we're not moving like individual tokens across the wilderness map as we go or anything.
That kind of matches what I think is best practice based on my experience. Back in the day, we played a lot of in-person because we had access to VTTs, and VTTs were fun and cool, but we could play in person, and the VTT was an invitation for chaos. We had some people who used to fiddle with it, see if they could break it. We had people moving tokens all over the place, and I want to say you had told a story a while back about a game you played with Arlen where everybody was moving in all directions and it kind of got out of hand. And unlike a computer, a human is single-threaded, so it's hard to, unless you can lock them down, it doesn't make sense. And it probably, too, it depends on the correct use. So what are you trying to do with it? You're not going to drive a pickup truck cross country if you can avoid it, because that the purpose of the pickup truck is to haul stuff, not to cruise, contrary to popular opinion. I'm going to get in trouble for that. But the moral story is use the correct granularity, because if the group is hanging out together, there's no reason to waste the excess clicks to move multiple tokens. But them's just my two coffers.
And for the tactical battle for Pathfinder, there is use in having the tokens because you have flanking and you have all these crazy things in there. But for a simpler game without all that crap, I'd be fine just doing a Theater of the Mind. And most of the games I run are pretty much all Theater of the Mind. I do Zoom, and then I put pictures up in the background. I'll do like pre-do a slideshow or something where I can cycle between different pictures for the background and just do that. Let people control their own character sheets at home and roll real dice at home, because virtual dice are also the devil. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
And I am glad you are thinking them. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for calling in.
Hey, Taylor. Daniel from Bandit, keep calling in. Another great episode. I love all the various conversations. And that was really interesting that the spells that Pink Phantom talked about. I wonder if when I see spells like that with like deeper explanations, I wonder if those are reactions to things that people were doing, right? Like they were blowing up too many scrolls. So they're like, oh, we need to make a spell so that doesn't happen.
Oh, absolutely, and without question. Those are my favorite stories, as relayed anecdotally from some of the original gang. The Rob Kuntzes, the Mike Bernards of the world, where they did something and Gary's eye twitched a little, and then all of a sudden in the official product there was a side note, you can't do it this way.
So that's actually pretty cool. I love that. But anyways, I'm calling about the VTT thing. I don't know if I'm the best person to ask, but when I run games on VTT, I actually don't generally use character tokens. What I do is, and I use Roll20 for this, I open it up, I put the Cloud of Darkness, whatever they call it, on it, and I just reveal as we go sections as they see them. So in other words, the players don't move anything anyways, and I abstract all my combat. Every once in a while, I'll put a little marker down, or I'll say, click on the screen where you want your character to be, that kind of stuff, but I don't ever, I shouldn't say never. I have in the past, but I generally don't use tokens for characters. I just write on it, almost like you would on a whiteboard. I just make a little X. Here's where the monsters are, or the traps over here, or that kind of thing.
Yep, I remember now. I haven't been watching as many APs lately, but I remember one of your old Hyperborea videos watching you do it that way. I wanted to learn how to do it because I could have gotten away with using Owlbear for free doing it that way. But I was too lazy and ended up paying somebody else to do dynamic for me.
So I don't know if that's the the most informative based on the question that was asked. But because I do it that way, I just chunk off an area as they're moving / can map, right? So your torch goes 30 or 40 feet forward, depending on what system you're using. So when they move, so when they stop, right, I say, okay, that's the edge of your torchlight. So they're basically 30 feet or whatever back from where the torchlight would be. It's the assumed position of the characters. So that's how I do it. I find that works really well for Theater of the Mind stuff. I usually don't. It's funny. I almost always just go Theater of the Mind, players just map yourselves, figure it out kind of thing for most stuff. But when I was doing the Hyperborea campaign and we were streaming it, right, so it was an actual play, people watching probably want to see the map. So that's the reason why I put the map up.
And Taylor makes a note to listen to the whole call prior to replying next time.
And I did leave the map revealed, so they didn't have to, which kind of made it a little easier, I guess, on some level. Or me as a player, I would have liked to have mapped it, but a lot of people don't want to deal with it. I left it revealed. I didn't close it off because I know they have that actual lighting that when you move a token, you only see what's around you. I left whatever they revealed, and I assumed that they were making an accurate map. Of course, by the time we got to those levels where they were really in dungeons, they were high enough level that, again, I assume they would have been able to make an accurate map, no problem. So that's my answer to that. I don't use the tokens, so it's not really an issue. I hope that some other people that use VTTs more regularly will call in because I am fascinated by them. I just find that the upfront work to make the VTT work just generally isn't for me because I don't often run very long dungeon delves when I run, especially not online. Anyways, as I said, awesome episode. I will talk to you soon. Aha, there was something else. Normally I have to leave 2 messages, but since I'm using a voice recorder, I can just add to this one.
Can verify. This was, in fact, one long message. Record scratch added for comedic effect.
Anyways, the other thing I wanted to say, I was thinking of this when Pink Phantom was calling in as well, and the other conversations about the maps, and I thought, your map could also be a person, right? Let's combine the two things, right? If the map is somebody's memories of a space and not a physical thing necessarily, maybe there was somebody that was on an adventure, maybe as a torchbearer, 10 years prior, right, with this group of adventurers, and then they went missing and nobody really knows where they went, but this torchbearer remembers where this dungeon is, and they're looking for some cash, and your adventuring party's in town, and they're just like, hey, yeah, I can bring you to a dungeon, but I want this much gold up front and this much when we get there, that kind of thing, right? So do you trust that guy or not? Do they actually remember the map 100%? How do we handle that? I think that would all be super interesting. So a person as a map, combining both of the ideas.
Vanishing Tower J vindicated. that kind of ties in too about one of the things I think he had started to go down is the use of guides. That's something that kind of gets neglected in RPGs. We do maps, we do mapping, but how many of us actually hire rangers in the wilderness to kind of haul us around? Now, we're supposed to, because as OSR types we allegedly buy into the hirelings, but I'm wondering how often does that happen at the table. So fun idea, fun observation, and good opportunity. Who knows, you get down to that basement level where you're through all the mapped areas that the one guy remembers, and bam, hit him with a feeble mind. Map erased. Any opportunity to mess with the player. Thank you for calling in. So this was the part of the episode where I was supposed to sit down and answer the question, where are you, Whispering GM? Well, the truth of it is I've been lurking a lot, but having recorded this segment 5 times now, 3 times I was just not happy with it, and 2 times my wife interrupted me based on some background noise. I anticipate that this might be attempt number 3, but long story, I've got some stuff that I'm working through, and I will have to make some amends on some follow-up episodes. And if there was one thing that I learned from my experience on early G+, pre-OSR G+, is that if you air too many of your problems, then your circles get dramatically smaller. So I'm not going to make that mistake again, and instead I'm going to focus on problems I have and what solutions am I going to try to get through them. So that's where I am now, and that's where I hope to be. However, that the one thing I do want to put into this episode, and I apologize, I wish I could have done a longer section on this, but if I'm going to get it out tomorrow morning like I want, then I'm going to have to get this recorded and published. But I wanted to say thank you. A couple folks had touched base with me, noting my absence to check on me, make sure I was still around, to encourage me to keep on keeping on, and I appreciate you. You know who you are, and I want to say thank you for touching base, and it makes me feel like we're part of a community. With that in mind, thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with me, and look forward to some more episodes in the coming weeks. Got a couple in editing, so hopefully I'll get those out, and we'll be back on a cadence for the end of the year. In the meantime, don't let life come between you and the dungeon. And that wraps up this episode of the Whispering GM podcast, an independently operated product released for educational and informative purposes under the Totally Steal This license. Some sound effects are retrieved from Mixkit.co and used under the Mixkit.co royalty-free music license. Others are retrieved from Pixabay and made available under the Creative Commons 0. Theme music is Raw Power, licensed through PlayOnLoot.com. Parties interested in or with questions regarding the podcast are encouraged to reach out via the methods provided on the Clearing Square Ring Mail blog. Thank you for listening, and delve on.